Let's start with mini-C. So when we were thinking about mini-C, again, we were thinking about how does this relate to learning. And we realized that whenever somebody learns something new and it's personally meaningful, kind of a deep, meaningful learning, that's an act of creativity. And we also recognize that that kind of mini-C act of creativity that happens in the learning process is probably also what's happening in larger manifestations of creativity where external evaluators or eyes are saying that's a creative behavior, that's a creative product. So that's where mini-C starts. It's kind of the subjective experience of creativity. It's the kind of self-awareness that this is new and meaningful to me. And then it moves into sometimes an articulation that others can recognize as creative. And that would be little c.
And what's interesting is that the traditional definition of creativity is that it has to be novel or new and task appropriate. And yet with mini-C, we're kind of breaking these rules in that somebody else may not see it as new, but as long as it's new to that person. Whereas at the little c level, or everyday creativity, other people recognize it as being new. And we sometimes like to call it county fair creativity, in part because we developed a lot of the model during the Oregon County Fair. But this idea of that bit of creative work that everybody can bring to the table in some way, that people can appreciate, can enjoy, whether it's cooking or building a birdhouse or scrapbooking or singing a song on your guitar. It's that level of everyday creativity that is recognized as being creative by at least some other people.
Right, and I think, just to dwell on mini-C, little c just for another moment, what I think was evident to us as we were thinking about this and observing creative expression, like at the fair, for example, is the idea that, mini-C creativity is sufficient. It's a sufficient level of creativity. As long as the person's enjoying their experience, sometimes it doesn't even matter sometimes if other people don't recognize that moment of learning or that moment of insight. It still has value in itself. And what we started looking at, for example, in some of our recent studies, is the case that some people might recognize their creativity, other people don't. And what we're also seeing in kids, for example, is kids often don't recognize their creativity, but other people do. So I think there's some interesting things of helping youngsters realize that what they're doing is a creative act and that with some support it could be developed in something that other people could recognize. So that maybe moves us to pro C then.
And once you're at little c, so once your work is recognized by other people, in essence, you have that decision of whether to keep working at it, to keep practicing, developing your art, or whatever the product is, maybe working with people who are professionals and experts, and that over time, over practice, your work will reach that level of being an expert, of being professional. And to a degree, this is the most that we can really realistically aspire for that's under our control. It is under our control how much we practice, how much we try. The jump from pro C to big C, or genius, that's what happens with history. That's what happens in the generations after us, and we can't necessarily control that. There are things that back in 1850, somebody would have been sure, wow, this author will be remembered 150 years later, and nobody has any idea who they are. But pro C is something that is within our control, and with appropriate practice, repeated efforts, continual production, we can really strive for.
Absolutely. And I think it's valuable, if we're thinking about creativity as a developmental trajectory, to have those examples of eminent creativity. Those are very inspirational. They show the heights of human accomplishment. And again, it's out of the creator's hands in most cases. So I think when we're thinking about cultivating creativity in young people, for example, giving them many opportunities to explore creativity at the little c level, and then helping them understand if there's one particular interest or area of aspiration that they feel really inclined to pursue, how much it takes, what kind of work it takes to go from your interest and your expression of it at this level to actually become an accomplished professional creator. And so that's where bringing in accomplished creators can serve as important models, and that can really help cultivate that that creative trajectory. But again, even at the little C level, I would call myself a little C cook. Some people might call me a mini C cook. But that's sufficient. I find joy out of that. People are happy eating my food typically. And so it's not something that I'm going to go on to culinary school, but it's a lifelong form of creative expression and is fine in and of itself. It doesn't have to go to the next level.
And I think it's worth mentioning that your level of C will vary by domain, by endeavor, and that you may have somebody who's at the pro C level of teaching or of psychology research or of art, and when they try something else, they may be mini C, they may be little c. It is rare to have somebody at that polymath level who is pro C at many different areas. It happens, of course, but it's rare. But you'll have a lot of people who might have this whole spread of their pro C in this and their little c in these 10 things and their mini C in these 40 things. I mean, I love singing in the shower, but I wouldn't sing probably even in front of other people.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Not that I've heard you sing in the shower.